I do have 1,300 hours, so we will bring the meeting to order. It looks like for today, as normal, our first agenda item is going to be a roll call of the members. Miranda, is that going to be you again that will do that? Okay, great.
Presiding Officer, Director Scott Donaldson.
Present.
Assistant Presiding Officer, Captain Oscar Hernandez.
Present.
Chief Alan Banks.
Here.
Officer Shannon Barker. Here. Sheriff Jack Curd.
Here.
Lana Gudgel.
Here.
Sergeant Jeff Lake. Training Coordinator Jay McClellan.
I'm here.
Sergeant Renee Morales.
Here.
Pat Rios.
Here.
Chief Deputy Salvador Rodriguez.
Here.
Assistant Chief Jay Tillerson.
Present.
Deputy Chief Marcus Wall.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Welcoming remarks from myself. I just want to welcome everybody again, whether you're here in the room with us or via teleconference. We appreciate everybody making time on our busy schedules for this important project. Feel like we got a lot done last time. I think we're in a good position to keep doing that today, and I think we're going to make some good headway today also. But that's basically all I have until we get into the agenda items. Deputy Director Grissom or Vineyard, would y'all like to say anything?
Welcome back. Again, we appreciate and reiterate what Scott said. We appreciate you carving the time out for this. And you think it's important. Appreciate you folks taking this as important as we do. So, there you go.
Director Vineyard, would you like to say anything?
Yes, sir.
All right, well, that being said, let's get into agenda item number 2 here. It's going to be approval of the minutes from our previous meeting on the 17th of this year. I think those were all provided to you electronically as well as here in front of us. Has everybody had an opportunity to look over the minutes from the last meeting, or does anybody need time right now to do that?
Okay.
I think now what I have to do, I'll remember this time, I have to have a vote. So we now have a second. So all in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
I think that was a delay. You guys, we are approved, right? Maybe I need to wait a little bit longer before I do the opposed. Okay. That kind of caught me off guard. I was like, oh, I don't know what to do now. All right. So great. All right, agenda item number 3 here, receive updates from the subcommittees to take action if necessary. The training and continuing education. That subcommittee, that is the one that we're doing with that's what we call the one about the putting together the annual training or whatever we decide to do. Is that correct? Okay. I guess I'll start and then we can talk. We did have some conversation via email. Myself, Elena, Chief Tillerson, and then Deputy Chief Wall jumped on there too. And we have a preliminary idea, we think, of where we want to go, but we obviously wanted to bring it to everybody's attention here. Some of the first things that we talked about, I think would be more common sense than anything, but we obviously threw it down kind of with some blooms, if you will. We feel that this training, the student would be able to understand Texas Administrative Code 211, understand Texas Administrative Code 217, understand Texas Administrative Code 218, understand Texas Administrative Code 219, understand Texas Administrative Code 223, understand the TCOL Comprehensive Evaluation Preparation Guide, and understand the TCOL Training File Checklist. So that's where we started. And then I know, Lena, you also had some insight. Did you want to share what you shared with our group?
Well, just some of it needs to be, in my opinion, directed to the specific training coordinator positions. So the difference between those that are doing the academy and the basic licensing versus a contract training provider versus a police department or sheriff's office, just specific to those disciplines.
And then I know Chief Wall, you also chimed in on.
Yeah, I think there was some conversation on, is this going to be an annual CE training? And I think we were all in agreement that is what we've leaned towards, is having them do some sort of training each year to stay abreast of all of those different items that were placed in front of us. And then as well, with the option of TCOL being able to add to, let's say you have an issue arise, you see some kind of issue for the year that you're having problems with, you can add that to get that information out in front of the training coordinator so that you can maybe address that without having to wait for your conference or something else. Or if it be important enough to make sure that it doesn't continue to be a problem, put that on the training and make sure the training coordinator they're on.
I have questions around that annually versus biannually, so we stay on the training.
That's what I was gonna say. Should we do like our legislative updates?
Sure.
But for discussion, I was just, yeah.
What would be easier for you all? Like, would it be biannual or annual?
But anything we can slave to our standardized unit is probably going to be simpler. Of course,
Because it takes a little bit to receive the complaints and kind of work them through there and everything. So, I mean, I would say biannual probably. Training.
One question that I have, and maybe I'm not aware with the new TCLIT system and all that, is the trackability of this. I know at least years ago, I don't know if there was a way, like with TCOL new supervisor, I think somebody could promote at a department, become a supervisor, but there was no way we had to notify you all that we now had 2 years to take 3737. Typically, that would just come up during an audit. If something happened, they would say, maybe this supervisor hasn't had that. Would this be similar, or does the new system actually allow, now that they'll be on file with you as a training coordinator of record, that you would be able to hold somebody accountable for not doing the training?
Because remember when we say training coordinator, we're narrowing this to somebody that has a contract with us,
Correct.
not just a police department or sheriff's department or constable's office says, hey, Bob's going to manage our training. But they don't have a contract. They're not reporting training to us like an academy, say, would. Then that person's identified. They're actually, it's not really an appointment, but they're classified. So there is a field in the database that says Shannon Barker's training coordinator for Houston Police Department. So we can find that and then measure the required training off of that. So this, to contrast it with what you were talking about with new supervisors, we don't know who made sergeant or corporal or lieutenant, and our system doesn't capture that, so we don't have visibility. But for training coordinators, I think we would be able to track it with the system as it currently is.
Okay.
Because they're specified in the contract. When that position changes, we update the training provider's file, which training providers are held separately. They've got a unique identity, separate from licensees and departments. So I think we could probably track that.
Yeah, so we introduced a whole unique set of challenges in doing that. One of the ways that we find out who the new training coordinators are when the conference comes up and we start to hold people accountable, because the way it is now is the training coordinator is supposed to be at the training conference or at our annual conference. And years ago, I think that was the focus of the conference. It's now gotten much broader, right? But I think if you're going to look at continuing education and particularly specific things that you want to train, if you require that to be done at the conference and all the training coordinators are supposed to be there, that is what will be easiest for us to track and enforce. The challenge becomes is the training coordinator doesn't have to be there if someone else goes in their place. So there's, for whatever reason, a few of the training coordinators can't make it, someone else goes in their place. And so the decision would have to be is that something that could be delivered to that person? Can we accomplish the same through someone in their stead if we allow that to happen? That is going to be easier because we do check to see, did all the training coordinators appear? And if they didn't, how are we going to develop some method of accountability? That would be easier than doing it as almost a training compliance issue through what we do every 2 years.
Are we still, I'm sorry, go ahead.
The last thing I'll say, if you choose to do that, then I think you make, the idea is to develop a standalone class that will be at the conference, but training coordinators have to go to that particular class. Right now, you get to choose which classes you go to generally, right? We have some that are single session everybody has to go to, but I think you're talking about something to be mandatory. And you could even break it up where if you are a training coordinator for a licensing course, this one, and then all the other training coordinators have to go to this other one, kind of what you were talking about. There are a few key things that address academies, but not everybody needs to sit through that one. We'll have a different course for them, but that can all be done at the conference. We're already leaning towards sort of a track system, I think, that will focus more on training coordinators and academies and break some of that up. So it would be consistent with what our vision is for how the conference is going to evolve.
And I know we kind of kicked around at the last meeting. This mandatory thing might be an online solution that, you know, we update as things move. So if that's what was required, then like everything else, it would have a specific course number. We could pin it to an individual licensee or somebody holding a PID.
So I do like the idea of doing the conference thing, but I also don't think the transferability is a good thing, because myself speaking, I know that when we get held to the fire, it's not the representative that gets held to the fire, it's the training coordinator. And so I feel like with the transferability, somebody else sitting in the class, you lose the teeth to say, hey, you knew this, you documented the training, which I think is the whole intent behind doing the training, is holding the training coordinator accountable for the information that is in that class. It makes it a lot harder to hold them accountable for training that we're not requiring them to take because we've allowed transferability to somebody else.
So if we did like an hour and a half at the conference that the training coordinator have to attend, if you're an academy training coordinator, I think we could do an online, we could do a Teams version of that. 2 weeks later, that is the one makeup opportunity. You either have to do one or the other, or we could develop some other alternative presentation of that same material directly to them where they're gonna have to, but it just can't be where we'll do a 4-hour online training block that's equivalent. We're not gonna build a class just for that. We can't I get all the excuses, all the reasons that they can't be.
Yeah.
Right, and I get that too. I mean, things come up and you can't go, and I think that there definitely needs to be another option to complete that training, but I don't know that I think the transferability is just a good outlet.
I think also, we spoke at the last time about setting a date, like once you're appointed, you have 90 days or 180 days to do this. So if we have the conference in September or October and somebody gets appointed training coordinator in November, then we put ourselves in a position where it's going to be almost a year, maybe, unless it is available like on demand for those that get appointed in between the times of the conferences. So I think this.
I thought you were envisioning two different things. One was like a new training coordinator training program that's everybody has to do in order to get that initial appointment as training coordinator. Is that?
Okay, so that's making more sense now. Okay.
That's different than the continuing education.
Okay, that makes more sense. Two different platforms. Okay.
And that's actually when we get into the proposed rule that was drafted based on the discussion last time, you'll see, I think what TJ just talked about is there is a new coordinator, you know, training. Whatever the reasonable expectation, whether I think we'll see it's 180 days or something.
Okay.
That tends to be a goal that most people can meet. And certainly making that as available as possible. I think anything we do, whether it's the basic course or the continuing ed version, we will deliver it face-to-face at the conference. Make that as one of the ways to get there. Because, you know, most of us believe that's the best way, that real-time interaction with the instructor and the peers in the group. Is probably the best way to deliver it. But I think we've got to have that other option for people you just described. If the conference is in September and I get appointed in November, if you put a 90-day, 180-day window on that, I have to have another option, whether it's we are doing it face-to-face around the state, leveraging field service agents or whomever, to deliver that, or we stand up an online version of that. Everybody can meet the rule, and then, you know, ultimately, as TJ correctly pointed out, we want to, and this is based on feedback, we want to do more of a training coordinator track at the conference that's kind of purpose built for the people who fill that role. We've got chief administrators that come to our conference, you know, because some of the stuff is attractive. And sometimes they sit on the training coordinator stuff so they can throw the BS flag when our training coordinators telling us, well, T-Cole says I have to do this thing. T-Cole says I have to go to Hawaii. You know, so the chiefs kind of use that as okay, I'm a better consumer of what my training coordinator is giving. Mm-hmm. And then expanded options for telecommunication. I mean, we've got a bunch of constituencies now that show up to conference, all expecting something to speak to them. a lot of people that are pure instructors. I don't coordinate anything, but I teach in the industry. So I go to the TCO conference.
We're working on a background investigation course. My team's going to put it on quarterly here in Austin. So if Chief appoints someone new to do backgrounds, they know they can send them within 3 months to get the training. I think that would be our goal and something like that. If there is a new training coordinator course that you have to have, if it's offered quarterly, you should have 2 opportunities where 180 days is up. If there's an online version that you have to take, then you can take that. But I think our goal is going to be to teach more classes regularly in person to avoid those misunderstandings early on.
And this is, I know we've thrown this one across. This would be for new appointed from like a specific date on. I hate using the word grandfather, but like the ones that are around the state right now, will they need to go back and get a psych? Will they need to go back and do all these other things if this gets approved?
Yeah, don't need to.
Most of the time, you don't have things that operate retroactive. So rule passes to become a new training coordinator, this rule will apply. Now, where I would contrast that, and correct me if I get off track here, is if there's a new continuing education requirement. So let's separate new coordinators and then this notion of a continuing ed class. If the continuing ed class gets implemented, no one's grandfathered.
Agreed.
It is a new requirement on all incumbents.
Yes.
So that they start to meet that continuing.
That was that's where I was going with that, was I wanted to make sure just because somebody's already a training coordinator, that means that they don't have to do this training the first year. I would recommend that everybody would have to do that, whether you've been a training coordinator for 20 years or 30 years. I just don't know if we need to make everybody go back and get psychs and do all the other stuff, but that could be open for discussion also.
So the reason we've been able to get everyone else with continuing education in the past is because each unit ends. And so when a unit ends, we can start at the next unit. And so we could do it with the training coordinators in that way.
And if they tie it to the conference, then that makes it easy. It'll just be the next conference that would be required.
The next, well, like this year, or when you say next, you mean?
It's up to you. We
I see.
can put it in the rule when it goes into effect.
Okay.
Right? To give you an idea, chiefs of police have to do certain training within 2 years of their appointment, which is every chief is different depending on when they got appointed. But then once they've completed that training, they go into the regular cycle, the next complete unit.
Yes.
Right. So it would be the same thing as new training coordinators would have to do that training, but then for the next conference, they would have to get continuing ed going forward. And if you don't develop it for the 2025 conference, then it would be 2026 is when everyone would start, right?
Scott, are you
Yeah.
speaking to something different about the minimum requirements? Are you talking about those being retroactive? Or are you specifically talking about continuing education? You mentioned psych and.
Yeah, I was talking about the minimum requirements that we have proposed in draft.
Yeah, I kind of see where you're going about, are you grandfathered in? Like, do you have to go back to doing those things? I think that's a good point of discussion, only because if you're currently having problems with current training coordinators now, and you don't make it retroactive, or that you have to have it by the next 2-year cycle or whatever, then you're going to continue to have these problem training coordinators that are going to be grandfathered in. I don't know if that's a problem or not. I mean, I can't speak to that on the TCOL side of.
Legally, how does that apply? Because that would be changing somebody's job description.
I know, that's what I was wondering too.
Is that agenda item number 4?
I think, yes.
Yeah, we may.
Oh,
yeah.
apologies.
Okay.
Let's finish the training one,
Sorry.
because I do have some ideas, and that is something that Aaron and I discussed.
Okay. Sorry, I jumped ahead.
No, I think I'm the one that brought it up. That being said, I think we kind of mixed these 2 bullet items together here, the curriculum and the training. Is other open discussion on that? I think what we'll do as a subcommittee is get a little bit more firmer grip, maybe on something that we can propose and like how long this training should be. If it's going to be on an online platform, which I'm hearing it might be. I mean, none of us like to sit in front of a computer for a super long time. But I think those are the things that as the subcommittee, we can work.
This is just would be our preference. If you'll specify the topics and the content and kind of leave the length And, you know, a lot of us are trainers here. Worst thing in the world is say, okay, you got to make 8 hours out of what essentially 2 hours worth of.
Right.
So if you'll specify what, you know, what the student look like coming in and what you want them to look like coming out, and give us the freedom, and we'll probably panel a small, not necessarily a big advisory committee, but we'll get a focus group and we'll put that thing together and then let the content dictate the time.
So you just want us to give you like a draft list of the course objectives?
That would be fabulous.
Okay, we can do that. And we're almost there. So,
And then
yeah.
we'll let the content dictate the time after there's some instructional design's been applied.
Okay.
So do we need to do that for two different, for like the entry?
Yes.
New
first
coordinator
new
training.
coordinator training and then do one for, or do we leave that second part up to y'all as the years go and just do for the new training coordinator? Does that make sense?
That's what I was gonna suggest as the direction you're going. So the new training coordinator is
Right.
pretty defined. You know what you want in someone when they're getting signed up.
Right.
The other one could change annually depending on the need.
Well, yes.
Based on, right.
But what we would normally do, I expect based on what I've seen Colin do in the past, is that we would convene a similar group to have input each year as we're developing, getting closer to the conference, to make sure that we're able to meet each training coordinator's
Right.
needs.
Like, it just hypothetically here, like if we put something together and let's say we do implement it for the conference in 2025, that could be the new training. And then obviously it will change as laws change and other things change. And that'll have to be a working group because it'll be like legal updates. I mean, we don't know. I think it'd be hard for us to build what we don't know.
Right.
So I think right now, if we can just build the new training that'll be effective whenever it becomes effective. And then when it's time to update that course or whatever it is based off legislation or new rules or new laws, then we do that also.
So does there need to be a motion that we place that on TCO's responsibility for the reoccurring training? Or do we just work on the curriculum for the new training?
Well, I mean, not to put you in a box, but it's an advisory committee.
Right.
So you would recommend to the commissioners that this thing happen.
Right.
And we already have a subcommittee. I think the subcommittee can finalize what we're talking about here, bring that back and propose at the next meeting. So this is what.
So this is what we would like to take to the commission for recommendation.
And if the subcommittee got the bandwidth to take a shot at both, this is what new coordinator looks like. And this is what we think is either kind of a constant. We know that it's a constantly shifting landscape. We can do the real-time modifications in each unit. But if you give kind of the shell of what you think continuing ed would look like, and bring that back to us.
Like some refresher things and then just keep it at the forefront.
Because it would just be a proposed recommendation, just like these.
Right.
It would just be next to, and in addition to these standards.
So you would have a standard for police and then you would have a standard for the private sector, or it's the same standard for both?
I would say just one. I mean, I understand there's different roles, but
I think the role of training coordinator, the proposed rule really ramps up the qualifications to get there. But continuing ed would affect everybody. So it's a private sector vendor that teaches, underwater crime scene investigation. So very narrow bandwidth. They still have to know reporting requirements, expectations, and record keeping and all that.
everyone's held to the same rules. So,
I think that the licensing course one is going to be different, that is going to be a more advanced one, and then all the others that are not licensing courses would be different. I think
It
that's
could
the
be.
distinction we've drawn in the what we're working on, right? The minimum standards, is we've just been working on the licensing course. And I think that is going to be, if there's a separation, that's where it would be.
okay. Any other comments on the training continuing or curriculum? Miranda, I know you did, but I just wanted to make sure you saw we did get one more. Okay, just want to make sure you marked.
Real quick, so the entire committee's clear. Do you want to read off what we proposed that we're going to work with Ellen Shell one more time, if everybody's clear on what we're looking at taking the training into?
So I'll make it quicker this time, but basically an understanding of Texas Administrative Code 211, 217, 218, 219, 223, understanding the TCOL Comprehensive Evaluation Preparation Guide, and understanding the TCOL checklist that they have for the audits. And then I'll open for conversation. I mean, I think those rules cover a lot of the stuff that we're all thinking in our head. I mean, if we cover all those administrative codes, I mean, that's, to my knowledge, that's basically what you need to know as a training coordinator. And then again, the checklist and understanding your comprehensive
If
evaluation.
you're going into two evaluation guide and checklist, which aren't, rules, I know that they're more guides and forms. Is it worth adding the BCF to that as well?
Sure.
It's a pretty big, I don't know how many other agencies, the background confirmation form, how many people have issues with that, but I know that there's a lot of nuances with that BCF form that probably haven't been addressed to new training coordinators. I know it was kind of a learn and go for us. But I think that background confirmation form really holds agencies to what they're hiring. And I know it's not going to apply to like the continuing education training coordinators, but I think that form really holds the standard for hiring people. And I think it's worth maybe adding that one as well.
And I thought about when I was sending these to the subcommittee about also I can't remember the exact name of it, the training coordinator desk reference manual. Is that what it is?
Yes.
That also I think is another good thing, but this is a whole nother topic. I think that also needs to be revamped. So I would say that maybe once we can get that updated and get a good reference manual, that might be something that we would want to also include every training coordinator as well. Because I know I was actually having a conversation. There were some training coordinators I was speaking with a couple of weeks ago that didn't even know that document existed. And then I had somebody call me, and that's why I added this. They said, "Hey, how do you get prepared for an audit?" I said, "Look at the checklist." Like they're basically going to start at the top and work your way down. But I just think I don't think people know those documents are out there.
Right. Well, they're not covered in the current training, or at least not the
Right.
training I took in 2019. It
So,
doesn't talk about any of that.
and that's why I think it's important to include it in any new training that we do. Anything else on that? All right, if not, then I think we will move on to agenda item number 4. Discuss and take action on matters related to developing minimum standards for training coordinators. I believe it was you, Aaron, that sent us out this draft. Was that correct?
That's right. Yes.
Okay, so has everybody had a chance to look that over? It's also provided here in copy. I believe this is basically the one that y'all were working at in a working document as we were talking last time, and you were kind of updating it. And then I don't know if it's necessary for us to read through this line by line, if we've all had an opportunity to read it. I don't know if we need to spend the time on that. I'm not trying to say it's not important. There was one thing that I noticed that I thought was a little bit of a different conversation, please tell me I'm humble enough to be told I'm wrong. And I don't want to skip. If anybody else has anything, the one that I did notice was actually on page 2, number 9. Where it says for providers who provide a peace officer basic licensing course is not prohibited by state or federal law from possessing firearms or ammunition. If you're offering a basic jail course, you're also doing firearms qualifications. And I don't know if we just want to limit that to the basic peace officer licensing. Would we want somebody that's just doing a jail course to be somebody that isn't allowed to have firearms or ammunition?
They're required. Not all jail court, basic jail courts doesn't have firearms component.
Yeah.
Unless you have one.
Unless you had one.
But if you can't have firearm or you shouldn't be teaching any of it to begin with.
I almost
I
want to,
think we may be able to broaden that language that if you're delivering courses that require firearms.
I would say they require licensing. I don't even know if somebody running telecommunicators should be running it if they can't possess a firearm. So just any licensing course, I would say at least that is my recommendation as a minimum, not just the peace officer course, but.
This is just mirroring.
Right. And we had that conversation about trying not to change those because that can get confusing. So maybe that's why we did that. It's just for discussion. I don't know. That was one that kind of stuck out to me when I read them.
I think you make a good point.
We also had something kind of brought up while we're on this document. We've had several members contact us asking about conflicts of interest. So I wanted to just throw it out to the committee and see what that, as the current rules, there is nothing that would prohibit a TCOL employee or a commissioner of TCOL from being a training coordinator. So you're like the dogs watching the hen house kind of situation where they're supervising themselves. So on behalf of membership, we wanted to throw that out to the committee and say if there's anything, if that raises any alarms with anybody else, that as it currently stands, you could be a employee or commissioner of TCOL and also be a training coordinator. So you are on the governing body that is monitoring your own stuff.
I tell you, that is the case right this minute. With the commission. That person was appointed by the governor because they were a training coordinator. The
I was
perception.
gonna say, I'm gonna object to that because I'm like, ugh.
Remember, TCOL is governed by police, sheriff, and constable, not required to be those three, but it's in my 40-year career, always had a police chief, sheriff, and constable. They just have to be three chief administrators. And you have the 3 line officers, 3 public. So arguably you have sheriffs in the same position and police chiefs in the same position. So I Cullen's opinion, not the opinion of the Commission on Law Enforcement, but I think that there are people, everybody knows Jana Atkins, the training coordinator for West Central Texas.
I was gonna say, and I don't think it's necessarily, I kind of disagree with the conflict of interest thing, only because when you have a training coordinator serving on the board in the commission capacity, you're getting people that understand a whole new realm of exactly what TCOL is about. You don't want to cut off somebody's ability to be on the commission just because they're a training coordinator, because I would argue that that's precisely who you would want to be on the commission, because they're able to tell you exactly the ins and outs of what's going on with TCOL and kind of what things are going on. We have a very unique perspective of being able to inform the commissioners on, or if you're in that capacity of your dual role, you have a very influential ability to make change because you see it from both sides.
I agree. I think the other side of that, we'll use Scott Donaldson as an example so we don't use anybody real life. If I'm a commissioner and I'm the training coordinator record of my academy, and I don't know this is a good conversation. And let's say my academy does something horrible and there's a discussion of putting us at risk or pulling our license. Is that a decision that's made at the commission level? And if so, I can see what you're saying. I'm now a voting member on whether my academy is going to be put at risk. I mean, I would recuse myself, but I don't know, is there an obligation to recuse yourself? I don't know that.
Yes, so if the matter would, in the situation that you described, if the matter came before the commission, you would have to recuse yourself.
Have to?
That.
Yeah.
Okay.
You would have to.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes me more comfortable, I think.
And we've seen it over time, not just unique to training coordinator, but you see a chief, sheriff, or constable has one of their employees before the commission for some level of discipline, and they rightly recuse themselves.
Yeah, no, I think it's, to Shanna's point, I think it's important to have somebody that's done the job, doing the job on the board 100%. I didn't know the other side of it. So that's a good point.
And I think the governors have recognized that. If you look at prior to Jana Atkins, you had Pat Hollingsworth, who was a longstanding training coordinator. So I would agree with Shannon that there's value, and the appointing officer, governor of the state of Texas, sees value.
Right.
Sure.
Hey, Jeff, is there a specific or anything that bringing that to whatever membership?
So there will be a membership from, if we're getting into it, we're going to get into it. Membership from West Central Texas raised concerns.
No specifics, though, just they're concerned about the conflict of
People
interest.
that are covered in the COG that she is the training coordinator of raised concerns that there's a conflict of interest. If we're going to get into it, I guess we're going to get into it. So, but yes, sir. Yeah, there was direct relation concern specific to Ms. Atkins.
And maybe, and I don't know if this is the commission's role or something, because to be honest with you, when I asked that question, I didn't know. Maybe somehow a communication or something about that if everybody knew that they had to, that they shall recuse themselves from something, maybe that would help, because I didn't know that. And I don't know how many other training coordinators actually understood the law of that.
You would have to recuse. And then for there to be some concerns, I think we would need some kind of information on if she hasn't recused or if, she's interfering in some.
And that's what my question is. Is there a specific reason why they're concerned about that? Or is this a conflict or is it a personality clash or some of that nature? Because I'm kind of on the same side as the fact that I'm good with it as long as that person will recuse themselves from, but the experience is important. And to know what's going on and be a part of that, I think is huge. So.
Sorry.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir. You're good.
Is this something maybe that you and I could sit down with general counsel and talk through, and then if we feel like there is a problem, we can kind of flesh it out?
Yeah, I wasn't here.
I know, I don't want to get into the specifics.
I wanted to, again, obviously I have to represent my members, and that was something that was brought to our concern, and they said, hey, can you bring this up? So I brought it up. I wasn't proposing for or against. I just wanted to bring it up.
You're just the voice. You're the messenger.
Yeah.
Don't kill this. Yes.
This is where we dismiss something that there may be valid, but I think it's maybe something that we can address on an individual basis instead of just saying as a blanket, because I do think that as
I
a
agree.
whole,
Yeah.
there's a lot of value that we would be counting out a lot of people that would do the right thing or would not have an issue. And if we can solve that on an individual basis, I mean, there's always going to be that one, right? Or there's always going to be this issue. So maybe that way we
Definitely
can.
agree. For the record, I agree. That we should have.
But I think if there's something, I think
Yeah,
Mr.
and they
Mayor
can
need
work
to
it
have that
out.
conversation.
I'm over the enforcement division, so if they think
Yeah.
that their rules violations aren't being addressed, that's one thing. If they think they're getting preferential treatment, we kind of figure out the lane and then what can be done. And then
Yeah.
if it needs to come back to this
Sure,
group. we can-
yeah, we can have conversations.
But I think we're all in agreement as it pertains to training coordinator,
Minimum requirement.
yes, minimum requirement. There's no caveat. They should be eligible to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Well,
Well, I say that everybody agreed. I mean,
Yes.
it's just a matter of mechanics. We can't
It's a governor's appointment.
can't make a rule
Right.
that changes the governor's
Right. I was
authority.
going to say it's a governor's appointment, so you don't really have a,
We can make a recommendation.
yeah. There's a lot of politics.
We can
there.
strive.
Yeah, I was about to say, there's a lot of politics.
Aaron would love to go.
Right.
Cullen's gonna be in the bathroom.
Yeah.
So, looking at this rule as we drafted it, because it took us a few attempts, this subsection A at the start is intended to be Chief Banks and Captain Hernandez, what you're dealing with. If you have an agency, you have employees there, and you want to appoint one of your current employees as a training coordinator for your existing academy, that you can, right? You've already done the background, you've already monitored, they already meet those requirements. Subsection B is supposed to be everybody else, right? If you run a college academy, you want to hire somebody who's not licensed or is licensed. And it was also intended to capture if you've got someone who is appointed as a not full-time officer with some small agency, that doesn't exempt them from the process to be hired as a training coordinator. You still have to go through that whole process of doing that. We didn't identify in here who would do that process. I think we had that conversation a little bit last meeting, right? You could do it yourself. You can hire an outside entity to do it. You got the sheriff in your area do it, but it requires the same background process under 1701, 451 that most of the agencies use. So that's why it's broken up in that A and B. And then a conversation Aaron and I had this morning is this the minimum standard to get in the door, or is this a continuing standard? Because we haven't discussed that either. In other words, if someone gets indicted or convicted while they're training coordinator, does that mean that they no longer meet the standards and have to be removed?
Yeah.
Yes.
This was these were the minimum standards for appointment. And so we would need to add some language to make it clear that you must continue to meet those standards to maintain that appointment.
with that being said, just for my clarification, being from a college academy, so when I see A, it holds the respective license for the course. So my training coordinator is retired and holds that license. So if he left and I wanted to hire somebody new, as long as they still have that active TCOL license, even though they're not being commissioned right now, they're not doing that, they would fall under A.
No, they would fall under B.
So even though they have a current license, they would still go do the psych, do all, okay.
And I have a question surrounding that when you mentioned retiree, because if you leave an agency and have less than 180 day break in service, then you don't have to your psychological. So if you have a retiree you have an officer who's applying and goes to be a coordinator at a local academy and puts in their papers to retire, with that less than 180 break-in service between that, do they still have to go and do a psychological before they take that new position?
Because I would argue if they can go to another agency and be a police officer within 180, that they could be able to be at a regional academy or a COG also within 180.
All the doctors we've worked with recommend against that. That 180 days is a convenience, but it has no basis in reality. And so our goal is to move away from that, I think,
And I'm fine with that.
is that every new appointment should require a new medical and psychological.
Because that psychological is just that day and time right then.
I know that's something that y'all are looking at, but be very careful. You got places like us, it could take 6 months to get to an appointment to go do the psychological. It is a hindrance, big time.
And that's the trick, is we have to
So-
find a solution for that, right? Because
You would cripple the small places.
it's even harder for you to get someone who specializes in public safety evaluations, right? Because that most of the big agencies have people that is all they do is public safety evaluations. And so the key is, can we make those more available to agencies like yours to make it more reasonable?
You would cripple small agencies. The small sheriff's office, the day after the election, you would put public safety in total disarray because you just wouldn't have no deputies. You wouldn't have jailers, you wouldn't have dispatchers. Like, you would destroy, well, they'd just be doing it illegally because they'd have to put somebody in.
This is just for the training coordinator, not the jailers and all the deputies and all
What
that.
I'm saying is I'm going different with what he was saying. Like,
I'm
wants to
talking
know
about
where
our
it's
broader
180
goals
days.
are,
Right.
these psychological evaluations mean something. They're
I'm
performing
just trying to put that in his ear so he remembers that later on down when they're trying to make this rule.
While we're on this one, I do want to ask about number one, under A, holds a respective license for the course on there. I know that's just academies, but Lebanon Community College has a police academy. The director is a licensed peace officer. And they do a telecommunicator licensing course also.
Yeah.
He's not.
A is only for a police department, a law enforcement agency that has someone working there, and they're going to be the training coordinator for their academy.
Yeah, well, and Lynn, I came to the same conclusion because EPS has generally a trooper, someone who served as a peace officer, as their training coordinator, probably doesn't have a tele license. So what Aaron and I had kind of discussed was expanding that holds a peace officer license or the respective license, for the courses
I
taught.
think, yeah, that's.
So a sheriff who only is authorized to teach jailer courses could have a peace officer managing a jail course. They may or may not have a jailer license, but if we look at the peace officer, the BPOC specifically, as being the full meal deal, and the other courses being less but not subordinate to the peace officer license. They don't have to have expertise, but if you can run a BPOC,
Right.
then you can run an 80-hour telecommunicator course, or you could run a 120-hour jailer course. So if we said peace officer or the respective license, so DENCO 911 is only authorized to do that tele licensing course. Their training coordinator is probably going to have that telecommunicator license, be currently appointed with that organization, but they don't have to go get a peace officer. So like I say, I doubt DPS's training coordinator. Shannon, you got a tele license? Houston runs tele courses.
Yes,
So,
Yeah. that's what I was gonna say too, yeah.
Dispatchers that have the license.
Yeah. Because we kind of have to divorce training coordination from instruction. The training provider is obligated to make sure that subject matter experts are teaching the content. The training coordinator has to understand how the relationship between the academy or licensed provider and TCOL operates and has to maintain those standards. So I think if we broaden that language to say holds a peace officer license or at least the license, I mean,
Yeah.
that's acceptable. We were talking about that this morning, so thank you for bringing that up.
Under B, I'm sorry, I'm trying to see if I read this the right way. where it says 18 years of age for providers, and then you have the minimum education requirements, and it says B, I know we just talked about this, but has completed the basic training coordinator course. So that's making it sound like it's already been done. I thought we just said that we were gonna maybe allow them.
For initial appointment as a training coordinator within 6 months after appointment. So that's where you.
Oh, it's right underneath it. I apologize. Thank you.
But then the next one is
Yes.
any subsequent appointment prior to being appointed. So if you're only there for 3 months, you leave and go to the next one, you're gonna have to complete the course.
Yes, I'm sorry. I stopped reading. Thank you. Line right under it.
And they changed the language there. I was gonna bring that up under A3, but under B here also, we're using the term basic training coordinator course. Does that need to be the new training coordinator course? I know it's tomato, but
So that's the phrasing we were using for the new training coordinator course.
It's gonna be called the basic.
Yeah, we.
It's just kind of the language we had.
I think we're.
Draft, change as you wish.
Right. No, I think
I would rather stay with new.
I think to your point, as long as it's consistent, I don't want to call it new somewhere else, or we put it out online on OSS and it's called new training coordinator course, but in the rule it's called basic. As long as it's consistent, I don't know if it matters.
We're going, however the rule passes, we're gonna retitle the course so that it's easy cleanup and it's easy comprehension. So you could leave it the way it is. We'll title the course that way. If the committees, or ultimately if the commissioners say, we like new commissioner or new training coordinator course better, then, we're Ed Services is gonna try and mirror it, so everybody understands that it's apples and apples.
The reason I like basic is because I hope that it's gonna be like basic instructor, that people will go and get that certificate, even if they're not going to be a training coordinator right away.
Right.
Right, because this will be, the next step past. And
I'm doing it to progress my career. I want to put in for this position and I already hold what is required.
Right, and then very few people will become training coordinators that haven't already taken
Right.
it.
Okay.
We just have to be careful of the subsequent continuing education course, how we title that, because depending on the language, it could almost be looked at like the continuing education is the basic, you know what I mean? Like the language could get kind of tricky with the confusion if you leave it as basic and then you have a continuing education course that you call training coordinators course. Somebody could say, well, I thought that was the course I needed because, so I just semantics on the language. I just know how confused people get with seemingly very simple things sometimes. So just throwing that out there. If we call it the same thing, it could be open to some confusion down the road.
And we will not restrict people from getting into this. So
Yeah.
Lubbock, for instance, if we had a competitive process, because who's going to be the who's going to go out the academy and run it? You could require internal to your department that they complete it before they apply for that position internal.
Right.
I like the way it's written here where they've got, okay, poof, you're the training coordinator. Like, oh, what does that mean? Now I've got 6 months to go get it.
Right.
But an agency could reverse that, say, if you want to apply for our agency's training coordinator job, you go get the training first. So at least you know what you're signing on.
We would require.
Also, to that point, should this be voted on and approved, would the requirement for anyone who doesn't currently meet these standards be the same as in F, where they didn't meet the standard within 6 months? Would we assign similar time frame to those that aren't currently in compliance?
That's what I was asking, that we didn't put in the original draft, but we could add language that if you stop meeting any of these other requirements, that you have to end their appointment as training coordinator.
Is that the question you were asking?
So, I'll use my agency as an example. Let's say Lubbock's a private academy and our current training coordinators would be in violation of these standards if they did not become compliant in 6 months. Once these are approved, would they no longer, would their?
I thought we weren't going retro.
How do we clean up the problem?
Oh, no, that's right. We did this. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we were going to kind of discuss.
Well, here's the thing is with the community college, for instance, So we would be asking somebody who's been training coordinator 5 years, whatever, to go back through psych, physical, you know, do PHS, all of that stuff. Is that, I'm not opposed to that,
But to
that
Chief
would not be
Tillerson's
the
point,
norm.
not a requirement of his job when he was hired 5 years ago.
And I guess question would be, is there a separation between minimum qualifications and required training? And could you separate those two to say you have to meet this new training requirement within 6 months versus meeting the minimum qualifications for the position?
I completely understand what you're saying. If I fell in conviction on my record, I'm in violation of what these standards say.
Right.
You'll never meet.
Right.
You can't remedy that.
Right.
So, I don't know of any, but conceivably we could. What's the?
Or somebody who can't possess a firearm right now.
Right, that's what I was just thinking, like,
I thought this was gonna be the new standard going forward, the standard that you have to meet. And then we would say after a certain date, if you fail to continue to meet these standards, right, is what we were discussing. So if you
Right,
get,
so
if you get convicted of a felony, you would have to be removed. But someone who is currently serving, who was already in that position would not be removed. That there's going to be a date effective going forward. Is that?
So then we live with the problems that we currently have.
Well, that's what we work on individually. So, what we're.
I guess then that settles it for the committee, because all I'm asking is, do we need to include that language here? Or is that something that you guys work on behind the scenes?
I don't know how big of a problem it is right now. I mean, we would have to look because it is very challenging. Even, I can't just tell you how many have a peace officer license and tell you with confidence those people don't. Because 20, 30 years ago, there was a different standard. People with a class A could get a license and continue to have a license now when they would not be able to get licensed now.
Yeah.
So it would be difficult to determine that without doing a lot of research.
Yeah, I'm thinking that I agree with what you're saying, but just trying to think on the whole statewide level here, I think we might be butchering a pig and nobody wants bacon, because I don't know if it's that big of a problem. Now, if we were seeing, like we talked about this last time, all this data where because these people didn't have a psychological exam, then maybe I could see that. I think we're here to ruffle feathers, but I think if we go statewide and say people that are currently serving, especially peace officers that have a license, now have to go back and meet different requirements for the job they were hired to do. I don't even know legally if you can do that, but I'm not a lawyer, so.
Well, it would not, normally the rule would pass, and a simple example is when telecommunicator became a license. Everyone in place, including people who could not be there today because of citizens being one of the key components, was allowed to continue in that position. If they separated, they fell into non-compliance and could not get back in the business. But historically, an incumbent who is doing the job, if we have problem individuals, and some of the reason we're here is people we've seen in the past. Now, the organizations removed them. We've had some impact on some places. So I don't know of any right now. There's no one we're making these rules so we can go get Bob because Bob's not doing his job right. We're trying to prevent and lay the path going forward to prevent some of the things we've seen in the past, but we're maybe not currently dealing.
So, and I'd hate to mix this together, but in my head, I'm thinking, let's say I see a problem with mine. Is there a way in this rule that since you're a training coordinator of record governed by TCOL, that even if you're not a peace officer or have a license, that I could now do that mandatory fit for duty and say, you need to go get a psych? Because I think that only applies to a peace officer. If you're a training coordinator by contract, a civilian, and I see something, because my institute would 100% support it. But I know there's other institutes that we can't send them to a psych. Well, no, by rule, we have to because they're a training coordinator of record for TCOL. Is there a way of mirroring that, or am I really muddying the water? Because to your point, if I see somebody, it'd be nice to have a rule saying, no, they need to go do a psych or a physical.
Where you start slipping, and Aaron, I need your help on this, is this training coordinator, not necessarily the licensing courses, but training coordinator writ large includes a lot of private,
Mhm.
you know, some for-profit, some don't make any money, but they're still privately held. But our ability to dictate some of the things that they must do is different than our ability to dictate what a government agency falling under the government umbrella does.
Even though they're all under a T-Equal contract? Even though they all fall under a T-Equal contract? I mean, I get it. An agency's different than a private company, but it's the same contract, right?
Yeah, but
So let's not lose sight of the fact that we have lots of tools available to us. This is one more tool. So if you have a training coordinator who's been a successful training coordinator for 20 years and they have a felony conviction, they're going to continue to do what they're doing. If they have been a problem and my team keeps having to go out because of rule violations and everything else, they're going to be removed for other reasons. It's not the felony conviction that's finally going to give me the tool to address it.
Right.
And like you said, particularly because we have a contract agreement that basically we can terminate with notice for almost any reason.
Okay.
So I think what you were talking about is, as an employer, you have certain ability to address that problem if they're not psychologically fit for duty. That's a tool you have available. We have other tools available too. This isn't meant to correct like one single problem that we couldn't get to another way.
Right.
It's just to avoid most of the problems that we had. Some of those people shouldn't have been training coordinators to begin with. And I think that helps all of us with where we're trying to get.
And there wasn't anything in the law that said that they couldn't. So now we're going to fix that, saying we have now found out. So I'm with you. I was trying to address, because I do understand the inherent or not, just keeping with what we've got. But I think
So let me ask you this. We have a cog in the valley that's a big problem, a humongous problem. Training coordinators have been arrested. Individual provider persons have been arrested. Money has been stolen, yet that cog hasn't been disciplined per se. How would this help you, be able to discipline that cog, even though they continue doing the same thing per se?
And so I don't know that this will let us discipline. It should prevent some people from getting appointed as training coordinator that had no business being. That in the past probably were eligible, that now would no longer be eligible. If they fail to go through the appropriate process, that is where the executive director will be more likely to take action and maybe even, terminate the contract if they're not. That's what we see in police departments. All the people here are doing their job right. That's why they're here. They want to be involved in professionalizing. I don't have any examples here. But we have police departments that they meet with them, they do a brief interview, they agree to give them a job, they tell them to fill out the personal interest and bring it back. But they're ready to hire them. And everything they do in the background is a sham after that point. They have no intention of disqualifying that person. If you're doing that as a training provider and you're hiring people that aren't qualified, then we will take action against that.
I think one of the other key components of this is requiring the background. So if you look at who's normally doing the hiring in specifically a junior college or a COG, they have no idea what they're doing. So they don't do backgrounds in based on the way we do backgrounds as an industry. And so you've got a dean or vice president of workforce development or somebody hiring this person. They come in, they interview well, they get letters of recommendation from influential people. They put down the references. The only people the college contact are the references that they put down. They believe what people say in their resumes. I'm a rocket scientist in my resume, so because I wrote it. And so that's the hiring module. I think going to this law enforcement style background investigation, and then those non-practitioners looking at that and going, yeah, this guy got fired here, discipline there. He's been to 10 agencies. They don't have visibility. Scott, you've probably seen it, the hiring prospect, if you don't have somebody that understands our business in the decision-making spot, I think this will shed light on some of those.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head with our talk. It's somebody kind of
they don't know what they're buying
out there,
And this will help those contract providers, if that's the right word, around there that are going to be hiring moving forward new people when it's a rule that you have to do it. Because as well as I do, there's going to be HRs, there's going to be all kinds of things that go, well, that's not part of our hiring process. Well, it is for this position now. They have to have a psych. They have to have this. So we may have to keep some until they wander away, but I do think moving forward, this gives everybody a better way, including TCOL, us, people that do get pushed back from hiring agencies to say, no, we are going to have to do this. They're going to do PHS. They're going to do this. This isn't go online and apply on Indeed and meet with the dean. So I think that's good. Do we need to take a break? We're at an hour.
Let's keep going.
Keep going?
I got a flat can.
All right, so let's take like just a quick one, 5-10 minutes. All right, I think we got everybody back. So we'll just pick up where we left off there. I did have one other small thing. I'm sorry. When I read things, I just sometimes don't understand. On the back page, I think we already looked at this a little bit, but if you go to F, it says if an individual does not complete the basic training coordinator course within 6 months of initial employment as a training coordinator, a training provider must terminate the appointment if directed by the commission. When I see if, that's what makes me wonder, is this going to be circumstantial? I mean, is there going to be a time where I think what I'm hoping that there's an if, because maybe there's a reason they couldn't. Something happened and we didn't want a shall in there, because there could be an exceptional circumstance where if it says if, we could say we can do this. When I saw that, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't assuming that, because I know a shall makes it very hard for us, then we have to. But I just wanted to make sure, does that open us up to where we're actually going to be looking at this case by case, or will you look at it case by case?
I think it gives the executive director the flexibility to say, okay, you got it January 1, you signed up for, part of it is availability.
Correct.
If we don't make it available,
Correct.
we can't hold you accountable for not getting it.
Correct.
And so it just gives him the flexibility without a very formal waiving of a rule,
Right.
you know.
And I'm fine with it. I just,
Tim, piggyback off of yours, Scott, just right above it in G, there's a similar statement made. If an application or appointment is found to be false or untrue, question one is, if who finds it to be false or untrue, and what does that process look like? Training provider must terminate the appointment if directed by the commission. So I'm assuming that the if is the same answer you just gave. So what is that, if it's found to be false or untrue, what does that process look like?
Yeah, that would be an enforcement investigation. Then when we document, we take the executive director and he makes a decision. The trick in all this is that this is different than an agency, because a training coordinator has a contract with us that they're dependent on. And so really our muscle lies in the contract, not in their ability to argue whether or not there was an untruthfulness in the personal history statement, right? So I'm not sure you can get much more protection built in there, because if they want to argue over it, the executive director, then they're risking losing the contract. If that makes sense.
and
So
then,
is it, I guess, what it sounds like is the enforcement action from y'all's point of view is directly against the contract and maybe not necessarily against the individual training coordinators?
So let me back up. And for everybody that doesn't know, we were a personal history statement investigation, right? We get a complaint that someone shouldn't have been appointed. We go back and look, and they had a class A that they got deferred adjudication for. We do an investigation to find out how they got appointed. Sometimes they didn't list the arrest. They didn't disclose any of it in the personal history statement. The person that appointed them was unaware, right? In those cases, usually we pursue license revocation. They lied, they omitted critical information. It's very clear what they were being asked. In some cases, they put in there that they had the arrest and then it got dismissed, and it's a misunderstanding. The background investigator thinks that because it says dismissed on the criminal history, they were eligible, when in fact they had deferred adjudication, they should have been excluded. But that is not the fault of the person who filled out the personal history statement. That's the person who did the background investigation. What we're talking about here is the same type of situation. If you lie and leave out criminal arrest, if you leave out misconduct at other agencies, you get appointed and we find out that you failed to disclose those things, and they should have affected, and that's when the executive director would generally use something like this.
Yes, sir. I understand that. I appreciate your explanation. Again, got to put my cleat hat on here.
So
It's a very broad statement.
Right.
If it's found to be false or untrue, well, I misspelled my name and it was false now. And I don't see any type of due process built into this process.
And that's exactly what I want to explain. So a peace officer, we revoke their license at the agency. They can go through State Office of Administrative Hearings. They have some avenue to pursue that, right? If we tell the training coordinator that we think they lied and they need to separate them and they separate them, they're not going to have that same process is the point that you're making, right?
Right.
Is because it's the training coordinator's decision in an effort to protect their contract, they're going to do what the executive director asked them to do.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of my contention is that you can get it done without getting it done kind of situation that the TCOL can say, well, hey, if you don't do what we're telling you to do, we'll just pull your contract. That takes away due process, in my opinion, from the individual that may have made a mistake. I'm not saying that people should get away with murder, obviously, but we obviously, as an organization, we firmly believe that anyone that is governed by a governing body should have due process involved if they're going to be losing their licenses.
And in most situations, we're talking about licensee, we would take action against their license, so they would have some process for that. But there is the potential, under the way they've structured this, that you could be a training coordinator without being a licensee, so you would not have that avenue.
Yeah, and in a lot of these cases, we may not be taking, let's say that the training coordinator who runs afoul of this, if we took license action against that person, try and take their peace officer, like try and take their instructor certificate, try and take some of those things away, they would be granted all of the protections for that license action. But it's primarily the training organization that we have the contract with. The contract becomes a lever, because contracting for this service is discretionary. No one gets one just because of who they are. The discretion still lies with the commission as to whether or not we enter into a contract. The way the statute's written is we're empowered to train peace officers. We've elected to subcontract that. And so it's that subcontract mechanism. But the individual licensee will always have the due process if we were to take a license action against.
Yes. I guess specifically, my concern in this would be civilians that have an instructor certificate that are not licensed in any capacity, because you can apply, for a PID for anyone to get their credential or their training recorded. So in that case, the civilian has training that is acknowledged by TCOL. They have a TCOL record of training. They have no recourse. That's what I'm understanding.
But the intent behind this is that they intentionally falsify or provide fraudulent information, right? We're not talking about
But again, that's why I said this is a very broad statement. If it's found to be false or untrue, that's a very broad statement to me that you could really nitpick someone and say, well, this is untrue, so we're going to take action.
Well, I think our commissioners have a good history of, the concept of mental culpability. If we say this is untrue, that person has, the public speaking with the commissioners, or public comment with commissioners to say, here's what happened. I thought I was answering this question truthfully. Here's why. And so I think the commissioners themselves become a trier of fact, if you will, in that case.
But I kind of see what he's getting at, though. If you're a civilian, do you ever get to the commissioners? Because there wouldn't really be an avenue to be heard if you felt like the discretion that was taken or the action that was taken. In other words, you're going to cancel a contract for somebody, or you're going to tell them they can't be the training coordinator, then they're a civilian capacity. It never comes, there's nothing to fight. There's no rights of the person, I guess, to say, hey, I find this wasn't my intent. This is what happened. There's no spokesperson. There's no ability to speak for an argument for yourself.
So if you look at.
I think that's what he's saying.
Is found to be, is the word found, does that, should I assume that means that an investigation has taken place or will take place?
That's what I think. Maybe just clearing up language on an.
Yeah, that was my first statement. It seems like a very broad statement. It's found to be false or untrue.
Or is that just something I come across and say, hey, that doesn't look right now? Or is that something that the enforcement, and there would be an enforcement investigation as a result of what was found?
That's the same language we use on PHSs already, right? So
It
we
is?
pulled that
Okay.
language from our current
Okay.
enforcement.
It's in the
Everybody
current rule
all-
as it is.
But everybody always has due process, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
a property right to that license. If we do that and we don't follow these rules, we didn't actually find that. They sue us, they win.
He's saying for an unlicensed person. the
Yeah.
question
Yes, I
is
mean,
if you-
they would still sue us. They have that right.
I think what they're saying is, does an unlicensed person have the right to go before the commission?
Because we will represent a civilian if they have a basic instructor certification. we will allow them to be a CLEAT member, so we will represent them. But what avenue would we have to represent this situation? If they're a civilian with that instructor's certification, and now they're a training coordinator somewhere, so they are a legitimate CLEAT member, what recourse would they have to refute the allegations that are being made by the investigations division?
In the case they're a civilian, they wouldn't have the SOA pass. That's what you're.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Right.
They,
That's
they,
ridiculous.
they can't have SOA because you have to have specific jurisdiction to go to SOA.
Yeah.
And as written, it would just be, there's no guarantee to go before the commission. It would be district court as written.
So there's still an avenue. It would just be their district court, not their commission. So there's still an avenue to be able to fight it if that person's involved. So yeah, I think that's what he was kind of getting at, I think.
Correct. We can't take away due process when it's wrong. So.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I think that works.
Did we ever, go ahead.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I'm not trying to argue with you, but we do have these cases and we have all the time where they get reprimands or minor suspensions where we think they forgot something or left something out. You have to leave out misconduct, criminal arrest, things like that, generally for those to rise to the level of revocation. And I would expect that we're talking about the same standard here. I understand your concern and that there's always a different view, but to your question, yes, enforcement does investigate. It's my expectation that my investigator gives them an opportunity to tell their side of the story, whether they want to or not. That's fully documented and it goes to executive director and is presented for consideration.
Perfect.
So that is the step there. It's just, he has a valid point. If it's someone that works for you, they will have a path. If it's a civilian working for a college, they may not have that same
Right,
exact path.
And I was just going back on my follow-up in the next meeting stuff. Did we ever determine, or is there a determination when we talk about the psych and the physical, like it reads physically sound and free from any defect which may adversely affect the performance and duties of a training coordinator? That's different than a peace officer. And I don't know if we ever followed up on, are they going to take the same L1, L2 as a peace officer? Or who develops what those defects would be to say you can't perform? I mean, is it just the assumption they just do the normal, like a sworn? Because I'm not exactly sure they are the same job description.
So you have a job description for your training coordinator?
I do.
That's what you would send to the doctor. They would need to be able to
So
perform.
individually, okay, so that's how we would do that. Okay.
That's the way police departments do it now. Some police departments have very different expectations than
Okay.
the other one. You're supposed to say your duties and responsibilities, and your doctor certifying that person can do.
So someone that's running an online training, they only do one thing, their job description, they send theirs in saying this person needs to be able to handle an LMS system or whatever. Okay, so it's each, that clears it up. And what about the psych? Same thing?
That is just.
I think the psych is gonna get closer to licensed status, or it would be
Okay.
more similar. But you could easily have somebody who's physically disabled be a training
Sure.
coordinator, but they can't manipulate firearms. They can't, they're wheelchair bound, so they can't run. So I think TJ's right on is, here's what the expectation from the college is, Brian's job.
Okay.
Brian, and so he takes that to the doctor, yeah. And the college probably must lift 50 pounds,
Right.
The standard office type stuff. But if the expectation's higher, must be able to fast rope out of helicopters, whatever it is, that's what the practitioner is measuring against.
Okay.
Another important point that I meant to bring up earlier. I thought in the initial discussion, this was for the licensing courses. This is what this was, but that the other training coordinators who don't teach a licensing course might have a little bit different standard. Is that something that?
Well, that's where I got a little confused earlier when we talked about the A and the B.
So this would all be for licensing courses. A is a law enforcement agency that already has someone there that they want to put in charge of their academy. They don't need to do the background. They don't need to do all that because they're already there. B is every other licensing course. Even if they're a licensed peace officer and they're appointed somewhere, but you're going to teach somewhere outside that agency, you got to go through this process. Or college or a COG or someone's going to hire someone would have to go through B.
Right. It cleared up when we said hire. It's just, I was reading it like B was going to have to go back and redo all these things, which is why I asked, but I misunderstood.
But that's also to teach a licensing course. If you're a training coordinator that it does not teach a licensing course, right, Colleen?
Yeah. This is setting out a different higher standard for licensing course provider.
Correct. Moving forward.
Yes.
You're right. That's where I was confused.
So if you go into the current training coordinator rule where it says the training coordinator must have an instructor certificate, be a full-time employee, that's the only two requirements.
And breathing.
That's still true for Lexipol. Doesn't have any,
Right.
you know, or yeah, there's EMS outfits that only do, you know, medical training, you know, so that doesn't change because the perception as we got it in drafting this from the committee's first meeting is that you wanted to focus on those people who are licensing people and treat them differently, hold them to a higher standard.
And it's in the title. It's just when you, after we discuss it and read the title now, it clearly says over basic licensing course.
Yeah, so.
I'm about to ask a question. I don't really have a lot of information too. I'm hoping maybe it's not an issue, but how is the supplemental peace officer course looked at?
Is that a licensing course?
That's what my question is. I don't deal a lot with supplemental peace officer licensing courses, but I'm just
Well,
bringing it as,
Well,
sorry.
I will tell you that I've been dealing with it a lot, and just recently I reached out because when the pass rate was more of a more important thing, I was asking if people testing on supplemental affect my 100% pass rate, and I was told, no, it's not a licensing course.
We don't measure that.
Okay.
So, but as it applies to
And
this,
that's something we could actually use some feedback.
Okay.
From the committee, because we have several of those limbo style courses. The supplemental, for those unfamiliar with it, is out of state, federal and military police coming in have to take the supplemental.
yeah, so the only time that we really deal with it, I mean, we don't teach the supplemental course with us. We rely on if somebody needs a supplemental, we have a lateral coming in or something like that that can do the supplemental. We will usually use an online provider, which is why I kind of asked the question. I get a lot of calls because of my name being on the website and people looking for that course. I just know that there's not a lot of offerings out there to complete the supplemental course. So I was just.
I think what you're asking is like OSS Academy, are they a
That's
basic
you.
licensing course provider?
Right, that's what I was wondering on as this,
Short answer is right now, we don't see that as
As a
a
license.
licensing
Okay.
course.
that's what I was
It is
thinking,
one
but
of a series of components
Okay.
that this out-of-state federal or military police has to go through. So, but
that's how I was looking at it too, but I don't have a lot of dealings with it. So I just wanted to make sure that we weren't falling in a trap with the supplemental.
well, a similar course that we don't count against people who provide it is, I think, numbers 1107, which is the peace officer to jailer. So
Okay,
they've already got a peace officer license. There's an intermediate span, of course, because they already know handcuffing, they
Right.
already know searching. There's a bunch of stuff that's cut out of the jail course to allow peace officers to take this course, sit for the exam. We have traditionally not, even though it ends in a license,
right,
we have not looked at that from a training provider standpoint.
Okay.
There are some online versions of it. Some sheriff's departments do it internally. Sheriffs and now TDCJ are the only people who are supposed to have county jailers. So it really affects them, but we don't, for terms of evaluating them as a training provider, we don't look at that as a licensing course
Okay.
for pass rates.
I figured that was the answer, but just wanted to double check.
We don't see that, but if the committee sees it differently.
No, I'd prefer to not. That's why I was
In
wanting
both
to.
those scenarios, you're taking someone who's already licensed and you're just
Right.
giving them a little bit of
Extra,
additional
right.
training to get a second license type. They're licensed as a peace officer in another state. And in fact, in those cases, not all states, not all academies get recognized, right? We have a
Right.
number of training hours and things you did to make sure that you meet a standard of licensure.
Yeah.
That with this additional training, we
Right.
feel like you'll meet the Texas standard.
Yeah.
So they're not training them to be a licensed peace officer. They're training them on Texas laws to extend their.
Right,
licensed peace
and that's how I
officer.
felt, but I just want to make sure it wasn't lumped into this.
With that being said, when we read these rules, I'm assuming again that we mean TCO licenses. If I hire somebody out of California to be my training coordinator of record and they have a California post instructor, we still want them to submit that to you all you evaluate it, they pay their $35 and now, or so.
Yeah, to get to the TCOL instructor certificate.
Right.
Yes.
So they will have to meet the Texas requirement. So if we hire a federal agent, retired, anything like that, they will need to meet the Texas standard.
And all of those people would fall under B.
Right.
Especially in your environment.
Right.
You know, so I think arguably it gives Texas personnel a leg up and who gets to be training coordinators. But there's a path for anybody to get there. But yeah, tell your retired Secret Service agent, they got to go have a psych and a physical to work at the junior college. You know, how bad do they want the job? Because
We're telling retired police officers the same
Oh,
thing.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
so.
You're exactly right.
So,
You're exactly right.
I mean, I just hope it doesn't hinder us being able to hire people, because I could see a retired officer, I just retired, and what do you mean I need to take a psych and a physical, you know? But I agree with it, but I just see, yeah.
I'm the kind of, if I want the job, as long as you're paying for it.
I agree.
Yeah.
You know, you can go, folks, I'll give you some blood, as long as you're paying for it.
All right, other comments on the agenda item, was it 4? Not hearing anything? Then, that being said, I guess we'll move to agenda item number 5. Discussing and taking action on our future advisory committee meetings, dates, locations, including video conferencing. So I open it up to the floor.
Real quick, jump
Yeah,
back. We don't need, is this still under review? We're not taking any action on this?
I think we've got enough, revision in some parts that we probably need to redraft and bring it back to you. Would be the cleanest way to do it rather than taking any action on it.
So with that being said, probably the future meeting, kind of like this time, we can maybe have a newer draft number 2 proposed
Yeah. we can
for
do
us to
that.
look at.
Yeah.
Do you want to summarize real quick to make sure we got the areas that need to be adjusted or?
Sure, yeah. So from the notes that I took, starting with A1, it's gonna read, probably holds a peace officer license or the respective license for the course that to be taught, just to clarify there. The next change that I think the group recommended is in B9, and it's the regarding prohibited by state or federal law from possessing firearms or ammunition, just striking the whole clause before the comma. Is that correct?
So it's going to read something similar to, for providers who provide basic licensing courses, you're not permitted? Or,
He's just gonna take that out. So
I'm just gonna take that whole clause out.
oh, so it's going to say not prohibited by state or federal. I'm fine with that. Yeah.
Yeah, just so it applies to.
To everybody. Yeah, no, I'm fine with that.
Okay. And then next, we're gonna add a continuing requirement to meet minimum standards. It'll fall down in the E through G area. And I think those are the only changes that I had at the moment.
And then something that makes it clear that if you're appointed under these rules, but then stop meeting those rules, the appointment won't continue.
If you're already a training coordinator and then you move somewhere else, basically, is that what you're saying?
Well, I think you're talking about somebody who's indicted or.
It'll have an effective date, and then anyone appointed after that effective date, if they stop meeting the rules. We're not making it retroactive, but anybody who gets convicted of a felony that was appointed under these rules won't be able to continue their appointment, right? Or no?
Okay.
Like, so
I don't think we have to put that into, if we add the requirement that they have to continue to meet minimum standards, that'll take effect for any appointment happening after the date it goes into effect. I don't think we have to say it only applies to future appointments or anything like that.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we don't need to figure out the logistics, but we're going to add something that makes it clear you have to continue to meet these standards.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So if we do find somebody that's under felony indictment, then they can be held accountable to the new standard. Right.
We'll work out the language.
Yeah,
I think we understand the fourth thing.
Were there any other changes that I missed? Do you think I missed there?
Thank you for the summary. I open it up to the floor as far as meeting. Everybody's busy. I understand that. This is just Scott. I mean, I like meeting in person, but I know not everybody can do that. But what do y'all think? I personally feel, especially since we're getting another draft, that I thought maybe last time we said this too, but I think one more in person would probably be suffice, and then I think we're probably there. But you all tell me what your all thoughts are on that.
You're looking at 2 weeks, 3 weeks, would,
Because we have to give it to y'all by May. Is that right? May 1st. I know last time we spoke, and I don't know if this works logistically. The TCOL meetings here, what, March 4th?
March 3rd and 4th.
March 3rd and 4th is the commission workshop and TCOL meeting. So I'm going to be selfish. I will be here on March 4th for the TCOL meeting as anybody else.
I just don't know how challenging that is. with all
That's what I'm saying with their logistics.
All the logistics that they have to do.
Yeah, if that doesn't work for y'all because you have 2 meetings already.
Is it possible to do it the morning before the workshop in the afternoon on the 3rd? Or are y'all busy that morning?
Really tough.
Is it? Okay.
Logistically.
Just trying to,
So on the-
travel is just trying to,
So on the 4th, that's the TCOL meeting. What time is that?
starts at 9 and it can go till
He can go to,
So
whenever they're done.
Generally, are you done by lunch?
Oh,
not always.
this one might not, I think this one's gonna be a little bit long, 1 or 2, yeah, maybe.
I'm saying we met for an hour and a half today. If we met after, is that too logistically crazy for y'all for us to meet for another hour and a half or so after the meeting on the 4th?
Well,
Just don't know what time.
the
it-
problem on the 4th is it's at the Pickle Center.
Oh, okay.
It's a location.
All right.
And all.
It's just an idea. We don't have to do it then.
If morning of the 5th.
That's a Wednesday.
I mean, if.
We don't have to do that week. I was just trying to say if it worked if there was other people being.
Well, I mean, if people are traveling here for the 4th, if they stayed over for the 5th, then we're authorized to, reimburse for
Right.
that. If we met the morning of the 5th, then I think, because our prep for this meeting is not the same as the prep for the commission meeting. So I think we could get everything done by the preceding Thursday or Friday from our, mechanical standpoint here and be ready to serve you guys Wednesday morning if that fit into people's schedule.
How does that work for everybody? A morning, like 9 o'clock, like we did before? Is the room available? We have I'm assuming we'll find somewhere to go. Yeah. Guys on Zoom, how does that work for y'all?
Can you check?
It works good for me.
Good. Okay. I see 2 good on there.
also check and see if the room's
you'll
available.
it'll be Zoom, because I won't be here. So
Yeah,
For it in the language, did we add something about the continuing education course on here as well? I see the initial training, but are we gonna add the?
He had that in there, and that would be in the last section.
Okay, but he was going over the changes and I didn't hear that in there, so I was just gonna point that out to you that we were gonna add something about the continuing. Yeah, just so it's on your radar for hopefully. I was looking for it, making sure I didn't miss something that was already written, but
Yeah,
'cause I've got
Yeah, I thought you mentioned that E through H.
okay, maybe I missed him hearing. I was focused on the continuing standards. Okay.
So I'm hearing that we may have 4 that will have to Zoom on March 5th. So do we just move it?
Entirely up to y'all, but the 4, as long as they're on camera and plugged in, they count towards the quorum, they can vote.
But what I'm hearing though is if we do it,
we want to hear him too.
I was gonna say, we still have to set this up though, because it's got to be recorded.
So the fifth,
So I mean, we're setting the room up regardless.
Yeah,
Okay.
we still need a physical location with whoever's chairing the meeting that we can publish and do all those things.
I just,
Okay.
it's hard doing the 5th just because I'm out of the office the 3rd, 4th and the 5th
Right.
because I make
Yes, yes.
commissioners workshop. And so being out 3 days is very, I'm busy. So
I-
3 days out of the office
I-
a week is really, really hard.
I agreed with Colin. If we were able to get you all reimbursed because it was part of the,
The takedown from Pickle Center and moving here and
Right.
then set back up is going to be hard to do the day after the commission meeting.
okay, then let's scratch that. Let's look at, well, we got time. We have until May, right? Then we're probably getting into some of y'all spring break and all that, so I don't want to interfere with that, because if your ISCP conference is the 10th. Week of March 24th. Yeah. Is it easier to do it on, I mean, I hate for people to travel on Sundays, but is it easier so you guys aren't out of the office so much to do a Monday?
These are terrible.
Terrible, okay. Tuesdays are better. What's today, Tuesday? Yeah, Tuesday. No, today's Monday. Well, so, oh wait, what do I have on the 25th?
Tuesday, the 25th.
That won't work. Can we do the 26th? My advisory board meeting's on the 25th.
Yeah, you have to have one.
I do need to have one of those. I'd prefer to move it to the 26th if we can.
26th is bad for us. We've got a agency-wide all staff here.
Thursday, 27th.
That works. Thursday's good.
This is always the hardest part of the meetings,
I know.
right? We need the doodle thing. How you guys on Zoom on the 27th? March
I'm good.
27th? Good, good,
Afternoon.
good, good.
Afternoon, 1 o'clock.
Want to do a 1 o'clock one again?
I like the
That works
afternoon
better
better.
for me.
It's-
Works better?
Yeah, because I can round trip.
That way people could come up in the mornings or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
1 o'clock, March 27th. We have a room, Paula, trying to confirm.
Yeah, it's 27th work for your support team. Joe's nodding his head in the back.
So saying maybe I think I need a motion for that one.
Second.
Okay, so all in favor of our next meeting being March 27th, starting at 1300 here in this same room, correct? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? I waited a little bit longer that time just to make sure.
He took half a
I
breath.
took half a breath on that one. All right, with that being said, I think it's time for us to receive any public comment on any topic. Do we have any public?
Yeah, I've mostly a question is being non-law enforcement. Last month, I was fortunate enough to attend the national championship football game. One of the people in our box is with an AI group that works with law enforcement, municipalities, government agencies and universities providing security in there. I mean, I was fascinated by this stuff. They were showing me video from, remember the shooting in New York when they assassinated the CEO of United Health? And their system was able to identify the shooter before he was even close in the gun. And they had other videos where they had somebody in a university looked like was going to be an active shooter situation, but they were able to identify the gun and get the local police involved before it ever happened. Have we ever looked at anything like that? And then it also got me thinking about training with this new AI. Are there going to be new training modules required?
I think eventually, you'll see it industry-wide. We don't have anything in the radar for like 2025. But you'll see, we're starting to see it come up at national conferences. There's some folks that are way out on the short end of the limb using some stuff.
I'll say to the other point of that, like at the college, not the training center, but we have 8 different campuses at Collin College. And they just implemented a system that can pick up weapons when they come through a door and get. So, yeah.
I mean, they had video on the street where guys walking down the street and the regular closed circuit camera picks them up.
Yeah.
And they said, look at this. What do you see? Us guy in a crowd walking down the street, and the AI zooms in and you see he's got a gun with him. And it's not really visible to someone that's not trained or even. And they were commenting the police were watching this and didn't even see the gun.
It's
definitely coming.
There's a bill pending right now to reduce or restrict law enforcement use of LP readers. So
Look what happened with our red light cameras.
To that, you've got the let's catch all the bad guys crew that are willing to do anything. And then you balance that with the right to privacy argument on the other side. So.
Well, you have the BPOC modification of the using AI to write offense reports and
Right.
stuff. So you've got a pro and con on all that stuff.
You moving in several directions, like Shannon said, report writing. There's also mobile video review that AI is involved in. So AI is hitting not just the security, the weapons element. There's a broad use of it coming into law enforcement.
I figured you'd be familiar with it because I guess they were, it's been a couple of weeks ago, they were at the TASA Midwinter Conference in Austin and showing there. And I mean, like I say, I was just absolutely fascinated by the technology itself, especially with something like that.
AI will make up in its own mind. AI will make up legal cases that don't exist and put it into your brief.
Yeah.
There's been a couple of instances where attorneys have written this lovely case, run it, or lovely briefing, run it through AI, and well, there wasn't a case that fit, so AI just made one.
Made it up.
You,
Yeah.
you mean, Aaron, you just didn't type in
I know.
minimum standards for appointment and just hit enter and let it just do this? I mean, come on. No, it's a good point. There's a lot of crazy stuff out there.
And that's why we, as a training and regulatory agency, we wait for that. We as the state, from an education and training standpoint, that has to go through all of the machinations out there in the real world. And there's some folks doing fascinating stuff with it. But Sheriff, what's your access to AI in Archer?
Actually, we actually have quite a bit.
Good.
Like with the Axon,
Oh, yeah.
with the, it'll pretty much write your report based off I mean, I don't allow it, but, I write a newspaper column every week for my local newspaper. I've tried to let AI write it for me, but it doesn't sound like me, but I'm still working on it because it's a pain in I mean, it's like, when it takes up my whole day to write this column, because I'm not a writer, but the lady before me did it, so now I'm stuck with it.
And you have to be careful with it too, because anything you put into AI is out there for the world now. And so there's elements that you can get that stay within your sandbox, but then there's other elements that you push out there. So there's CJIS implications. There's all kinds of other implications that play with AI.
Yep.
If you ever look at the Archer County Sheriff's Office Facebook page, everything on there was written by AI because my secretary puts everything in ChatGPT to make it look like it. And I mean, she sends it to me, and obviously I approve it before she puts it out there. But everything on our Facebook come from AI
That's cool.
because it sounds less hickish. They're more professional.
I think on that note, any other or any further public comment? Thank you.
Make a motion that we adjourn.
Okay.
Second.
Have a second. So I have a motion to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed? I move that we are adjourned, and we will see you on the 27th.